comment. So I just started my master's, my MPH at Cal Berkeley, and we could not use AI chat GPT at all on anything. Like,
Hmm.
so citing or not. So Reed, that's interesting that Dartmouth is taking the stance that if you cite it, you can use it. Cause we during orientation there was like a big NO.
How do
Yeah,
they know?
it's interesting you mentioned that too, because so Dartmouth has two cohorts, right? Like this cohort I'm teaching right now is the program I took, which are people that are professionals, right? And they are doing this after hours, and then once a quarter they go down to campus, blah blah blah, and then they have the on-campus 1 year MPH, which is really it's a conduit for MDs, right? Like it's or dual degrees later, right? Like the on-campus folks are usually students that came right out of undergrad and enrolled in the masters. They're still on campus. They're gonna they're living in the dorms, and so I'm very curious to see if like when you add that reality that the on-campus folks are gonna end up going further in school, does that differ than this hybrid program where they're really trying to train professionals and where they've increased the class size 3 times in the last 3 years, like
Yeah.
that type of thing. So that is interesting. You mentioned Cal Berkeley too, and that's part of why I brought it
How
up.
do
It's
they?
just like I hadn't
How do they
expected
know?
that to happen.
They said they
Right.
have tools, and I honestly think that how they know is because some people don't proofread. And I think that they catch it based off the incorrect use of words and just wrong answers in general.
Right.
That would be my assumption. They didn't tell us. They said they have tools to check, but
Yeah.
I
No, I mean
can
that.
find it. I can log in. Dartmouth has tools that we actually run assignments through, and so I can find the resources that the staff has and send it to this
Yeah.
crew.
I mean, you could always like check previously, right? I think professors would run stuff through and see if it matched other stuff out on the web. But this is more of like a writing style and usage
Right.
thing.
Well, as a resource, like as a research tool, right? Like they probably couldn't stop you from using it for that. Just like Wikipedia, right? Like you can't quote Wikipedia, but you could absolutely use it, look at the resources at the bottom or look at the links at the bottom and use that to kind of do further research, right? Um, I have been using Chat GPT pretty extensively, the 3.5, the free one, as I've been doing a bunch of kind of home projects for coding in Python and C++. And so in coding, you have the they call it the rubber ducky, where like if you don't know what you're doing, you kind of read your code through to the rubber ducky and it tells you like where you're screwing up. As a rubber ducky, as a co-pilot for kind of doing coding stuff, it's really fantastic. I've had so much success with it. Of like as a teacher of like, so it used to be you go on, you Google your problem, hopefully you find somebody who's got a similar problem to you, you look at what they're doing. It's like that, except nobody's telling you you're an idiot for not knowing what you're doing. It's been pretty great. Um, so which leads me to one of the thoughts that I had. And I don't know if you looked at doing this, Boyd, but I wonder if the TRCs would be interested in so you can take ChatGPT 4 and uh, build a custom ChatGPT 4 or GPT. And it would be really interesting a couple thoughts here. Build a GPT that was trained on telehealth specific data that we could use either as an internal resource for TA queries. So like, kind of some of those uh, brain, oh gosh, I'm getting the word wrong.
Our base camp thing.
A base camp, right? The brain trust,
Yeah.
kind of have that as a resource for that. Or something that we could make public facing that we just fill it with a bunch of telehealth resources, training materials, things like that, pointed at the public with the giant, massive caveat that, hey, this is AI data. The things that it might give you could be hallucinations or not quite accurate. So, this is most all for educational purposes and for public interest. But this is just one of the things that I was thinking. It would be pretty trivial. We'd have to get like a enterprise chat GPT license in order to have something that was public facing, but it'd be pretty trivial to set something like that up.
Yeah,
But that's just a thought that I had.
I did create a GPT just for fun, just to see, you know, what it was like. And you're right. It's pretty trivial. I mean, I think that's an interesting idea, really. Like if we uploaded all of the Basecamp brain trust data and other things, that would be a pretty massively powerful resource. You know, it would
Yeah,
be
or
like, well, what if it hallucinates and it gives the wrong answer or something like that? That would be the only thing, unless we put it out there, like you say, with a massive caveat.
Well, and do we want to upload all our data there?
It's a good question too.
Is there an API connect to our new data tool?
what's an API to our a data tool, Reed?
Like, yeah, would that be possible? Like, I haven't looked at Chat GPT before. Like, Andrew is the one that messes with it more than either of the two of us than I do. I do it infrequently on his login. Like, is there, could you do an API connection, right? Like, if the TRCs agreed, the new database management software that we're working towards transferring to, could we set it up so that the tool is learning off that database?
Are you talking about the replacement for the
Yes.
PIMS beta thing? I think Jordan and I are talking about our Basecamp knowledge.
Which would also, Basecamp could probably also API connect, right? Like Basecamp's whole thing is being able to integrate with whatever software as an organization has to become, a tool. So that, yeah, either way, that possible for a ChatGPT custom build to have a sort of looped in, right? Because then you're getting continuous input.
I think Jordan, you probably know more. I think the data has to be taken out and put into a new thing called a vector database, that then the AI runs against that. So I don't think you put stuff directly into ChatGPT unless like you're uploading files.
Sure. I mean, that was my understanding
So-
too. I was asking in hopes that I had a misunderstanding.
I think the Chat GPT specifically is you're buying the interface as much as anything else. The models behind it are, they're the models behind it. At enterprise level, you can just buy models, or you can buy cloud services that you can send API calls to. But I think that's kind of beyond the scope of what I'd be. First of all, once you get into serious enterprise level, the licensing costs go up significantly. And then B, the interfacing would be a kind of a bear to manage and make run. But what I would think we would want to do is like feed it some toolkits, or feed it some TA responses or things like that, things that we've created. Or let it chew on. We could probably give it some transcripts from videos and webinars that we've done, and kind of do something like that. I would think, at least initially, it would probably be just kind of a novelty. Something that we could say like, hey, you want to learn more about AI? This is kind of what AI is and how it does. Part of what AI is, and I think that's part of the what we want to do here is kind of say like, this is a small subsector of what AI is and what it can do. But
could we build off, remember the HHS hack at the start of COVID? How there was like that special TA database, and there was those webinars that IHS was hosting with a rotating squad of TRCs. It in part, the burden is probably not worth the reward, but the reason why I'm curious is that just got published. Dr. Chris Four from IHS published a paper on, like, I can't remember what it was, like lessons learned from the HHS hack or like experiences or something, qualitative data analysis, right? On the TAs that were given, the people that came, blah, blah, blah. But like, could that be something that we feed into it under the auspices of being able to say, like, we've used data from a published federal effort?
I mean, the better thing to do is just be to give it HHS time. It's public, right?
Well, I was thinking something like you were talking about, Jordan, and it could be any topics in our videos, right? But we did a bunch of stuff like autism stuff, but it could be like all of our webinars. And if we uploaded the transcripts, then we could create an interface where people go in and say, well, what is this situation on, licensing, blah, blah, blah. And it could provide an answer. It could also, I think, reference exactly where in the video for people to go watch the video and which video
Provide
to go see.
a link of resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you put in something about RPM and it links out to Kathy Wibberley's RPM toolkit and says, here's where I found this.
Right.
That would decrease
But-
that redundancy that HRSA is looking for. We're sending them directly to the TRC that has the resource.
Ooh, I mean, I like the sound of it. We're using AI to reduce redundancies, Mike.
That would send him spinning.
Do you think so?
It's already spinning.
Because it's unrelated. He was in a mood today. But no, I mean, isn't it? I like the idea. I think it's at least an interesting thing to like pitch to the group because we're learning about the space as well, right? Like there's value add potentially for the TRCs, but in the meantime, we're becoming more fluent with with one of the softwares, right? Whichever one we pick, and we're becoming more aware of what we were talking about when I mentioned the school stuff, right? Like the limitations, the things to be aware of, stuff like that. And it's not research. It's not, it's not like
Well,
participant based. It's all internal. It's not like we're asking for, more information to do this.
the other takeaway I think that's really important that I think something like this would help with is generalized AI in healthcare is terrifying, but specific AI and expert learning systems in AI in healthcare have the potential to be really, really useful. And I think that's one of the things that is really kind of leaping out to me is that because the risks are so high in what we do, a generalized AI approach is probably way far off for healthcare. Like your personal healthcare assistant that does everything and collects all your data and puts it all in and does all that. That's not what we're going to do. But systems, expert systems that we say, okay, take a look at all of these oncology records and help me make sure that I'm following up with all the patients that are due, so nobody slips through the cracks. Something specific like that, low risk like that. So I think that's one of the takeaways that I really kind of want to push is that like, hey, let's focus what we want to do with AI. You have to have the use case. You have to solve a need. Something like this could be like, hey, this is the thing that does a very specific job. It only has this information, and we'll see, you can see what it does versus, like it does everything. And, it's your dating service and it's your, it orders your groceries and it, does all this stuff. So.
Hey guys,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Jolene just chatted me. She needs me on another meeting, so I need to jump off. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Good to see Nikki.
Yeah, if there's any
Enjoy.
notes, yeah, thanks. I'd rather be
Say
on
hi
this.
to Jolene. We didn't see her today.
I was gonna say that, but I already saw Jaylene today, so it felt weird.
But yeah, you guys had your meeting for net inclusion finally.
That's right.
Thank goodness. Yeah, no, I apologize. Like I said, I'd much rather be here if I'll just look at the notes in Basecamp. See you guys soon.
Deal. Good luck. Yeah, and Jordan, I guess just real quick, net inclusion definitely an avenue for us to get some considerations for broadband resources. Jaylene and I are going to have to meet probably twice more before we go in February, based off what we learned today in terms of like what the audience is, because they're not healthcare people at all.
Yeah.
They're the people that are in between healthcare and the layman. But focusing back to this call, your specificity comment, I just tossed it in the chat. It gets back. I feel like I keep doing this, like I did it to you on the steering committee call. Like, what do we as a group consider our charges here in terms of like learning things for the rest of the TRCs? So like, I'm working on a virtual dental home project in Maine, which required us to do an EDR landscape scan, right? Electronic dental record landscape scan. While doing that, I stumbled across the link I just dropped. Curve Dental, which is one of the national EDRs. I mean, there's nothing like Epic in dental record, but there's something like Cerner, right? And Curve Dental is like a Cerner level of like national use. They're using it. They're actively doing it. They figured out the spot that Sylvia keeps talking about in terms of CMS's definition of electronic communications, that it works. And to my understanding, it's like a triage thing, right? So your dental hygienist or somebody else takes the photo and AI prioritizes it for the dentist. It's not saying, yes, this is, a tooth that needs to be removed. It's not doing any of that. It's just saying this tooth has a crack in it, and that's a bigger priority than this guy who's just got a cavity. Right. They did some very specific teaching of whatever software they're using. So when you said your specificity thing, I instantly made me think of that. I've got a couple of contacts at Curve Dental because there are a lot of dentists in Maine using that EDR, and I had to learn about it. Is that a charge for our group? Like that we would want to talk to them about, what it means to do specific AI design with healthcare, and or like how, what are the considerations they took, blah blah blah, or do we want to just look to see if they have case studies online? You know what I mean?
I think looking at those types of use case examples and looking at that level of specificity is good. One of the things that I'm realizing as we kind of dive into this a little bit more is we really need to nail down our audience and our deliverables. This is true for the broadband team and for this one. So I think potentially, yes, in the fairly near future, we should be kind of doing a deeper dive with particular technologies. But I think in the short term, our concern probably is who exactly are we writing? What exactly are we going to be doing? And then who is it going to be for, with that short kind of between now and the end of March timeframe. And then knowing that we can expand kind of beyond that date. But does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally agrees. And I guess the last thing I would say for our pipe down, I'll let the other two chime in, would be that like remember that currently we have the leverage point of the Ninja training, right? So we can say anything like learning about a dental AI or something like that is useful internally. If we think it's a big enough need, we could do as a Ninja training, right? To follow up with the one that Sylvia set up later this week. And then we can look at what you're talking about as its own thing. Internal stuff, we've got the Ninja.
Actually, I'm going to pivot a little bit. Could you set up a call with that group and TTAC? I think that sort of like evaluation, like, hey, show us the kind of bells and whistles. That's a great thing for TTAC to do. We're always sitting in with vendor calls, looking at what they have that's coming around the corner. I think we could probably ingest that, make it palatable for TRCs or for this group. And if you're part of that as well, like I think that's the thing to do. We'll delegate that to TTAC.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. So I will, right after this call, I'll shoot an email to that work group and just basically say like, hey, after some conversation with the AI group and with TTAC obviously is part of that AI group, we've got we feel like we got a clear path forward with this. Let's chat about what the group identified as needs, blah blah blah, No, I think that sounds great.
All right, I think that's a cleaner way to do it. Okay, so I made an agenda. The agenda is the agenda, but what I really want to talk a little bit about today is, and we're kind of down to a smaller group. I can refresh the email out for everybody else, but I really want us to think a little bit about who our key audience is, and then what would be helpful for that particular audience. So I think at least in the medium term, one of our audience is the telehealth resource centers. So we HRSA wants AI. They don't know what they mean when they say they want AI. They just want they just know it's an important thing, and they know that they need the TRCs to be aware of it. I think we need to figure out what that means, and then kind of how to make that something that we can make palatable for the TRCs. I'm really curious about what the Ninja training is going to be, and kind of seeing what gets teased out there. I was at one of the other California webinars, and that looked good. And I dropped a link for if we missed it. I didn't get a chance to go to the Southwest AI webinar that Dr. Krupinski did, so I will be watching that and ingesting that. But one of our key audience, I think, are the TRCs, and then I'd like to kind of think about what that means to have the TRCs as an audience, and then talk about any other potential audiences that we need to kind of make sure that we're addressing.
Well, I just want to throw in a comment as well, Jordan, that so I did see Dr. Krupinski's thing on specifically she was talking about AI and software as a medical device. And then Cal TRC did their program last week, and I think they've got another one this week. And I mean, you have people from the TRCs who are really deep diving into things.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, what is the combination of breadth and depth that is appropriate? Because, with a few keystrokes, anybody can find out pretty much as they want to know and more.
Do you think you could bust out that list, Boyd, of like who you like, just a quick jot down of who in the TRCs you've seen dive in to it, right? Like we could, the first section's AI work group members, and the second section is like TRC staff who are doing specificity. I guess I'm thinking back to like pre-COVID days, Jordan, when like everybody knew if you had a question about USAC funding, you asked Kathy Wibberley. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just like one of those things.
Board,
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to do that. All I can tell you, though, really is just the encounters that I've had. One was Elizabeth talking about software as a medical device. And I've been to a couple of those software as a medical device things. And frankly, Elizabeth did like the best job yet that I've heard of somebody delving into what it is and what it isn't. And then Cal TRC did that thing last week, and they brought in a third party person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily myself have like, hey, here's the list of, the top group of people who frankly I think are on this call, but in terms of
fair.
it, it's just this, it's the idea, kind of like Jordan, I think, I don't want to speak for you, but like last time, Jordan, you sort of said, hey, let's keep this scope manageable. Maybe we have this 2 or 3 page thing, and it links people to resources. And I thought that was a good idea. And because otherwise there's so many, topic areas related to this, and you can go so deep on all of them. So which ones do we choose to do? Which ones do we not choose to do?
Well, and I think where it seems like the TRCs are kind of strong right now, or where we have the capability for strength, I think is threefold. One is on definitions and policy. CTRC is pretty strong on that, and I think I'm kind of surprised we don't have. I think Aislinn was on this call last time, but I want to make sure that we're looping them back in and kind of make sure that they're a part of it. But I know Sylvia has done a lot of work on that and has a lot of wants to make sure that we're collecting that information. The second thing that we're kind of strong on is I agree Dr. Kubinski on like software as a medical device and what that kind of looks like and what that infrastructure for kind of vetting and making sure that goes through the hoops is we're pretty strong on that. The third thing that we can do is Calvin and I have looked at a lot of telemedicine companies, and we're pretty good at like sussing out like what's meat and what's bone. So if what we've not done is we've not gone to a lot of these companies and been like, okay, give us your AI pitch, talk to us about what you're doing, and starting to ingest that data. So I think that's another thing that we can be doing is just kind of going through vendors, looking at vendors, and kind of being able to kind of take that information and process it into trends that we can do. So we're good at trends, we're good at definitions, and we're good at kind of the policy procedure. I like to think of us as telehealth mythbusters. I will take that on. That's what I want. We want to be mad scientists.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I'm thinking of it twofold. Like, you know, the NAC project that some of the TRCs took on last year, where Christina Quinlan, the billing and coding consultant for Netric, ended up helping make some fact sheets. I just had to pull one up today for TA, you know, and like at the I hadn't really looked at them yet, but the fact sheets are super personable, right? Like there's a emoji a Bitmoji version of Christina at the bottom. This tips from Christina, and it's like 3 bulleted coding considerations that might get you a higher reimbursement. You know what I mean? But if it was like a sort of like a not informal, but like less formal tone to it, and it's just like, hey, we took some time and we made sure we understood where AI is in healthcare and where it's not. And the Mythbusters thing kind of feels like a fun way to shape that conversation, right? Like we're busting the myths of AI in healthcare at this point in time, obviously, right? Like that's the huge caveat if you take that sort of tone. But I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, in terms of TTAC brand and the TRC brand in general, I think the thing that we've always strove for is approachability and helpfulness. Like those are the two things that we like that we always try to do is like, you know, we're going to get you information and we're going to do it in a way that's accessible to you. And I think that kind of ties into I think that's a great thing. So if we had FAQ sheets that were human readable, and I think that's one of the things that TTAC also does well is we're able to break down fairly complex bits of technology into like pretty readable, accessible things that people can use. So I think like if I were to just do this, like I think some fact sheets around like, okay, what is AI? You know, we don't need to go into like, you know, convoluted neural nets and, you know, back propagation and stuff like that. But at least understanding like, okay, you know, when people talk about AI, you know, in healthcare, what are they kind of talking about? You know, what are the big categories of this? What are the things? The question I want to answer and what's kind of keeps me up at night is I feel like there's a lot of kind of rural, small hospital organizations that know AI is important. They don't want to get left behind, but they don't know what they're supposed to be doing about it. And what I'd really love to do is like, hey, if you're a small hospital, you know you're supposed to be doing something with AI. You know it could be beneficial for your patients. What are the things that are reasonable for you to be doing? that are actionable and not like some sort of sci-fi dystopian thing that, what are the use cases you can solve?
I like that you've identified a very specific audience. It's the core audience that we serve there, and it's a group of people who need all the help they can get in terms of resources and guidance. And something that's very useful and approachable for them. I like that.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of the populations that shows up on every one of the slides. You know, every single time we go down to Rockville and they tell us to prioritize audiences, like they're on the left, right? They are a high priority group. So I think it's great. And I don't getting like now that we're thinking through this, where I would want to lean on the rest of you because I'm awful at scope creep, would be like the knack thing. I think Christina did 10 of those. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of them. So getting back to Boyd's question of like, what are we tackling specifically in this conversation, in this deliverable? Is it software integrations? Is it, so on and so forth? Would be my only thought, because I don't think we want to end up in a boat where the health disparities group ended last year, where it's like, yeah, we're trying to make 25 of these in 2 months.
I wonder if we don't need to take on a couple of the kind of some of the low hanging AI fruit, and what that means. What I think of when I think of that is clinic support tools, kind of some of the business management tools that we've already seen AI really kind of make a big deal in larger healthcare organizations, to kind of help with billing and coding. Talk about some of those systems that are, they do a lot of the dirty work that nobody wants to do, but they like, if I think AI is going to help small organizations in the short term, that's the easy lift that I see is like, hey, let's help you find some tools that'll help your organizational structure. Now, that's not specifically telehealth or healthcare, but like if a healthcare organization, if a rural healthcare organization is going to implement AI, those are some of the places I think would be most straightforward place to do it. The other places are in like screening tools, AI screening tools for different health populations, like retinal screening, or a radiology is going to be a really pretty straightforward and easy one, or not as a massive lift for a lot of these organizations, because they already have some of the infrastructure already in place. I don't know. Those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. But yeah, so if you're a rural clinic, if you're a rural hospital, administrator, telehealth, I know I need to start thinking about AI. I need to think about how to implement it. How do we get you on the path? And first of all, and I'm not even sure kind of what that path looks like. Yeah, Boyd. Oh, I think he's got his hand up, but I'm not sure.
I don't see his hand up, but I have a question.
Oh, that's my mouse. Never mind. Go ahead.
Are any of you aware of a rural hospital or health center that is using AI? And the reason I ask, go ahead, Reed.
No, just indirectly. I mean, so what I had mentioned to these guys earlier as we were trying to level set our scope was just that like, Curve Dental is one electronic dental record that is using AI, and so there are health systems in the state of Maine who may not have fully realized that that was happening, right? Like, it's using it as a triage, like to rank the priority of the need of the residents based off the x-ray or the other dental data they got. And I'm sure they opted into it when Curb Dental rolled that out, but there are a number of dental groups in Maine that use Curb Dental, and it's a piece of the pie if you're using Curb Dental, right? That's something that comes with it. In terms of intentionally using it, no, I don't personally know of any. But I wouldn't. I'll throw that question to Andrew, because Andrew is doing a lot of the local boots in the ground work with health systems in our area right now, and I'm more of the high level stuff. So I'll ask him, but I don't know if anybody that's like set out to use it and is now using it. You know what I mean?
That would be good. And then Jordan, do you have a question about AI usage in your tech survey that's going out soon?
Yeah, we do. I'm gonna pull that up.
Because, and the reason I'm asking is, are we missing the bus here? Because our audience is rural and underserved, right? Like sometimes we forget, or I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I forget because with the pandemic, we had so much urban, with all the licensing and reimbursement questions. But when we think about our audience that we're serving, and Reed, I really like how you brought NAC into this, and so on and so forth. Like, I feel like our rural entities, whether they be CAS, RHCs, FQHCs, CHCs, aren't utilizing AI because they don't even know where to start. And so, I mean, maybe we need to pare down a little bit and kind of forget about the noise of AI that's happening around us for the larger healthcare and larger vendors that are using AI on a regular basis. And I don't know what that looks like, but that's just kind of where my brain is going.
Well, I agree that focus is needed. I mean, I think one of the challenges is I think I heard some pundit experts say, AI is a general purpose utility. It's like electricity, right? It gets applied to all these other things. And so, if you were to look back 100 years ago and ask people, well, how are you going to use electricity? Right? It would be this infinite variety of things. So, when we talk, I think about, hey, is somebody using AI? Is a rural hospital using AI? That's not, I don't, that's sort of not the way in reality, like, that people are going about it. It's like, you don't say, hey, I want to go use electricity. You say, no, I need a tool to do something. And that kind of gets back to like the vendor idea where, okay, is this is it about taking notes and transcribing SOAP notes? Is it about managing the intake queue, right? Is it about providing a chat bot for people so that they have better access? It's if we have to be careful, I think, of there are all these like wow, you can use AI to do molecule folding or whatever, but really it's about, okay, for the people we serve, they've got a job to do. And where can these tools help them do their jobs? And that, I think, Nikki, you said something about, like stepping back or grounding. I mean, we can find you can find AI all over the place.
Well, and I think in a lot of situations, if you ask, and this may not be true of today, but in 5 years, you could probably maybe you could ask people, well, is your organization using AI? And they may be like, I don't think so. But there's 30 different things that they are doing, and they may not be as aware of it. 5 years was too much, but like next year, because it's just getting integrated into a lot of things.
Sorry, Jordan, I interrupted you.
Or even like Zoom's using AI for call optimization. I think in the short term, we need to move from the general to the specific. So I think what we need to do is we need to provide a general high level FAQ as to like what is AI and what are its potential uses in healthcare, and just kind of lay that out and have that as a resource that we can kind of just be able to talk to people with the understanding that that's kind of just the starting point. And then I think probably from there, we need to start looking at some of the use cases, whether that's patient engagement and patient triage for like primary care, things like that. Some of the potential use cases, dictation, scribing, that sort of thing. The ones that will probably be the most accessible in the short term, and start looking. We can do some kind of checking in with vendors in the space, do the market reviews, things like that, and then try to work from the most likely to the least likely, more sci-fi elements. But that's my thought. Reed?
I totally agree with you. Did you get that graphic I just sent you? Just because if you want to share screen, and Nikki and Boyd, I should have just included you on email, so you could have gotten it. But
Here,
I'll have a
sec.
web link soon, and MCD is a sub-recipient on this effort, so I technically have to ask every time I share it until there's a public web link. But like, is this something? Obviously, everything content-wise in this changes, but format-wise, is this something that we could do by March for this topic? As we get more specific, right? Is just like identify the places that we see AIs being talked about and or already being used within healthcare, right? Patient engagement, reducing redundancies, triage, right? Billing, coding, each of those become one of these little buckets. And then we just list some things that you would want to walk through if that was what you're doing, 2 or 3 per bucket. And that's something like this is our deliverable for our first spot, right? And then we come up with the stuff that you just laid out, Jordan. And this is all an open question. And if it doesn't make sense, it's fine. It's just sort of like, as I was listening to it, like this feels attainable. Doing something like this for AI in healthcare as a broad lens feels attainable and gives us some time to start to dig into areas that Jordan just laid out, that we've all laid out through this hour, that might have more immediate impacts, but isn't achievable within 3 questions or 3 bullets or whatever.
Or 3 months.
Yeah. Also
So are
true.
you thinking like a series of these on AI applications for note taking, AI for
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Like, does the series make sense, or do you think that you could do one that shows 6 different integrations? I don't know. And it's truly, this is a half-baked idea. This is you guys were all talking, and I was like, you know what this kind of reminds me of is this thing we just made. And so yeah,
maybe a single one just for time.
What we're describing is an AI framework for rural small organizations, right? So like application areas for this technology, for a rural clinic or hospital, right? And what we would need to do is figure out what those category buckets are. Where can AI make a difference, right? And kind of lay those out. And then we could take each of those buckets and expand on that further as we go. But it's a framework is what we're describing, right? I kind of like that idea. So like, what are the points where AI can touch the things that you're already doing, right? What are those connection points? And then what are the things you need to think about, like in those areas? And I think like key is like AI's got to have a job. What's the job that you want AI to do? And these are the jobs that you could potentially have AI doing within your organization. That's worth some thought. And this is something that that you guys have developed for telepsychiatry, right?
Yeah, so full context on this, VPQHC got congressionally directed spending from Senator Leahy in the 2023 budget to do a telepsychiatry pilot, basically emulating the North Carolina statewide model, but at a smaller scale, because Vermont had recently proposed to develop that model, and the legislature was like, how much does it cost? And no one knew. So VPQHC basically wrote this application to, develop a pilot and understand all that. And so, yeah, the graphic design of this one specifically is from Sketch Effect. They're a company that we worked with to, they do all of those whiteboard YouTube videos. So we worked with them to do a video, which I'll send to everybody so you guys can check it out. But we had a little bit of extra funds afterwards. We're like, do you guys do infographics? And they're like, yeah. And so they made this. But this is something that like we could emulate in-house. I can't promise it look as clean as it does here. But yeah, it's basically, we worked with 2 hospitals in Vermont to stand up a telepsychiatry consult service in their emergency departments. And now we're trying to develop resources for the masses based off that.
Okay, so and I'm just spitballing here. I'm just thinking about some of the big categories of AI as it relates to healthcare facilities. So, and I'm just writing these. I just wrote these down. Tell me maybe if we think there's more. There are different things that we would want to consider. But I would think one of them would be like patient engagement. That could be like chatbots or integration and like visit support, like reminders and things like that. Provider support, that could be dictation, that could be chart review, that could be, there are a lot of varieties that are so access to clinical support, decision support tools, things like that. Coding and billing, I don't like that, but like there's a lot of AI tools that are kind of being used to help with improve coding and billing, maybe data analytics, the business support side. Even IT, using AI to improve efficiencies in IT, that sort of thing. And then radiology, imaging, and screenings. It's a whole other category where we're taking like a wide variety of either images or lab results and kind of chewing through those and identifying kind of triage cases. I don't love all those titles, but like I think those are kind of 4 large categories that AI could interface with most organizations. They're going to have some sort of impact, but I don't know. What do we think?
I think it'd be a great deliverable, very specific, very tangible, and something that we could build from.
Okay.
Clinical imagery, is that what you're asking, Reed?
So like, I think I misunderstood some of Jordan's comments based off his last one at the end, where he's like, those are the 4 buckets, because I thought I heard like 6, which is what this has, right? So that's easily doable if you flip a page into a landscape view. But just thinking of like, can you boil any of this up, right? And so like radiology, retinopathy, dental, those are all image based, right? And so I don't think imagery is a word as much as I want it to be, and as much as I can't figure out what I want the other word to be. But like, usage of images is a specific clinical grouping, which includes at least 3 medical professions, right? Or do you just go broader than that and say clinical integrations, and then you're like retinopathy, so on and so forth, right? Those are your bullets. That was sort of my question. But the administrative one was first, because like I thought that Jordan listed a couple that like is a billing and coding it's a gross phrase for people that aren't in that world. Reimbursement is a charged phrase for everybody. So can you say administrative, right? And then you have billing and reimbursement, and then you have IT, and maybe IT has a couple of sub bullets, or maybe IT is still out on its own, right? Like just thinking of it, is there some larger groupings of any of the groups? However, Jordan, I think the groups you laid out make a lot of sense, and so that's where I was headed with that.
Okay. Instead of imaging, I think a lot of these come down to screening, right? So if we had a screening category, and that could take a couple different things. So it could be medical record search for diabetic screening. Like there's AI tools that'll actually just chew through medical records and say like, hey, we think this person has undetected diabetes, or medication adherence, like any kind of one at risk. We could throw RPM. There's a lot of RPM tools out there. So we could do like a clinical screening. I like what you're saying. We could do like an administration / business support. We could put kind of the billing and coding, data analytics, and HIT information all kind of into that. So it's doing more with less, and using AI to enhance those tools. And then I think having something that's patient focused and then having something that's provider focused. The other thing, but I think those are pretty chewable. I feel like maybe there's a fifth one that I'm not quite thinking of yet, but
So do we need something for patients? Or not yet?
so I guess I've got patient engagement, provider support, administrative and business, and then clinical screening were those
Okay.
the four that I was
Four main
looking at.
buckets. Okay. I think that covers it to start. And then I think once we start breaking it down, it'll determine if there's another bucket that is necessary, or maybe that's the next iteration of it, right? That's phase 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, right.
Wait,
We could take
what
each of
were they
these.
again? Patient engagement, provider
And-
support, screening, and
So patient engagement, provider support, administrative business support,
Okay.
clinical image, or I actually have clinical screening here, and that could be either imaging or medical records. So those were the four that I had. There's something else that I'm missing here. I think there's a fifth one, but I need to, I'm not sure what it might be. Potentially like maybe mental health or behavioral health. That might be a whole other bucket, or the other big one that I think is going to be emergency yeah, that's getting a little bit out of the realm of easy things to do. But yeah, if we kind of flesh out what a framework might look like, kind of based around those four categories, put some examples along with those, and I'll send that off to the group, and we'll see if we'll see if it's anything. Does that sound good?
definitely.
Okay. Other things, I've added a bunch of resources to that list of resources page. If you've got links or things that you want to kind of include in that, please do. But other than that, I think I'll work on putting this together. I think this is a good idea, and I'll send it off to the group, and we can start collecting feedback and seeing if there's a way that we can kind of make this nice and targeted.
Yeah, and we should use one of the AI designer services to design it for us.
Everything will have 12 fingers,
Exactly.
either on 2 hands or on 1.
Did I show you guys my AI headshot thing that I did?
Oh yeah, you did.
I meant to rib Derek about this. Oh, I know he showed up in one of my, people you may know tabs or whatever on Facebook the other day, and he totally followed your lead after we saw that DC Boyd, and his Facebook profile is definitely
right.
generated.
speaking of, like 12 fingers, hands coming out of the side of my, yeah.
But the other thing I just wanted to say is I just kudos to all of us. A, you guys put up with me for an hour after many of you have already seen me an hour today. But B, this this felt like my least oriented meeting today. And we weren't like we were trying to iron out what we were gonna do. I had a lot of stuff that's wrapping up budgets or opening up budgets and blah blah blah. But this is probably the clearest direction I've had all day. And it's 6 p.m. over here in Maine. So kudos to you guys because I'm pumped about this. I think this sounds like a really actionable plan and it's useful. You know what I mean? I think we're coming up with something that anybody can pick up, whether you're a rural health system or new to your job at the largest health system in your state. You can pick up and say, okay, maybe there's 2 of these bullets that I'm going to dive into, or maybe there's 4 of these, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I really like this plan.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm excited too. So give me something to think about. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. Thanks,
See you
Reed.
guys.
Yeah, set up that appointment with the dental. I'm really interested to kind of hear more about what they're doing.
For sure, yeah. I'll CC you guys when I reach out. I highly doubt the person that I've talked to is the person we'd want to talk to get into depths about how they did this, but I guarantee they can get us to that person. So I will get that done.
All right. You can learn a lot from a dog and pony show too. So,
Have
all right. Thanks, Boyd. Thanks,
Thank
Calvin. We'll
a
get some
good
notes sent out to the
afternoon,
group.
all of you. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon enough.
All right.